All right, so let's wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me. If you guys made it this far, I know it's complex and this is one of the weirder things about 3D. But thanks for bearing with me. So let's finish this up and get a texture on this guy. So first thing you need to do is once you have all of him unwrapped, which I haven't done his hands, but imagine you would have maybe grabbed it, done a planar map from the y-axis and split it down the middle. I don't know. Same thing you did with the body, only with the hands. But for now, let's just take this and figure out how we set this up. So the most important thing to know is this positive quadrant. All of these UVs have to fit inside of there. So I'm going to start trying to do that. Okay, so I've fit all of these into this cube, and the reason I've done this by hand is you actually can select all of this stuff and go to polygons. I think, where are you? Layout. If you go out to the, just click on layout. You can see that does an all right job, but there's a little bit of crossing over, like things are laying on top of it, and you can adjust those settings and try to make it work for you. But I like doing it by hand because I can be specific about this. And the less negative space in between these I can get, that means the more detail, the more space that these pieces are, and the more detail the more resolution I'll be able to put onto this model. Okay, so gotten all my UVs to fit inside this positive quadrant. I'm going to go into object mode and I can select it. So now I have these beautiful UVs that I can bring into Photoshop and edit. Now, how do we get it into Photoshop? Very easy, actually. Make sure you're in object mode. It's important for this part. Go to polygons, and at the very bottom is UV snapshots. That's polygons under the UV editor window. Go to UV snapshot. Blah. And here are your settings. So I'm going to change, it's probably 512 or something by default, or 256. Change it to 1024. I'm going to say 2048. And what that means is that's how big this file is going to be. It's going to be how much detail you have to work with. So 1024 or 1024 is typical. That's a 1K texture. And that gives you enough detail to do a little bit of cool stuff. But if you want to go a little crazy, and why not, I'm going to do 2048, which is a 2K texture. We'll usually use that for like a character or something that's like the main focus of my scene. But if I have some small prop in the background, I might not need that much resolution. So I might instead do like a 512 uh, texture because it doesn't need all that extra detail. I'm also going to go to browse, or maybe not. I'm just going to rename out UV. I'm going to rename this dude UV. You can actually see it's going to put it into our projects folder in default in the images folder. Images are our output folder. Source images is where we draw textures from. Images is where we output textures to. So I'm going to keep my IFF and I'll show you why. It actually helps out once we're in Photoshop, but this looks good. I renamed it from out UV to dude UV. I changed the size to be enough to have some detail to work with. Everything else looks good. I'm going to change my color value to black actually too, because that'll be what these guys look like. Let's go ahead and click OK. If you're not in object mode, this isn't going to work. So I'm in object mode. I click OK. Cool. It just output. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm going to open a file. It should be under Documents, Maya, Projects, Default, Images, Dude.iff. If I open that up, so here's why the IFF by default is a really great tool is it puts those outlines on a transparent background. So now I can lock this file. I don't know if you guys have much Photoshop experience, but if I select this layer, there's a lock option because I don't want to move that at all. So let's also rename this UVs. And I'm going to make a new layer, which I can go to layer, new layer, or I can click this little guy right here. That's our new layer button. And I'm going to put this below the UVs. I'm going to call this one background. And I'll just make a white background. I'll lock that too, because why not? I'll make a new layer, and this will be my color layer. And I'm going to go ahead and paint something. So let's see. Let's do this. Okay, so I just took my time to create some textures. Obviously, you can take your time a little bit more than I took, quote unquote, my time because this is just really quick. But things to think about while you're doing this. Here's my back of my model, and I like to just kind of, I'll be able to find out once I apply the texture, but I can also switch back to Maya and go to shell mode and see which one was which. So that's his front, and this is his back, so I can double check that. Also, when you're looking for these lines, I didn't do a very great job, but I can see which edge loop his belt loop might be at. I can switch back and forth if I go to edge, I click right here. So that edge is about where I'd put his belt. He's a little bit pulling it up above his belly button a little bit, but that's fine. And I'm also noticing that it doesn't matter if I go outside of those edges because it's not going to apply to anything, but it would matter right here where you see the skin texture a little bit on the corner of his shirt. You'll see that on the model, and also down here the jeans. I didn't quite get that filled in, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is now I have my texture. I kept UVs as a separate layer, so I'm going to go ahead and save this under default. I'm going to put this inside my source images folder. I'm going to save a Photoshop file, a .psd, because this way I can come back and edit it, but Maya doesn't like Photoshop files. So I'm going to save that so I have something to edit, so I have my layers still. And then I'm going to also go File, Save As, and this will be, let's do JPEG for now. JPEG. Dude.uv and JPEG. Maya likes JPEGs, that's a little easier to work with. So I'm going to select my model. I'm going to assign a new material, make it a Lambert for now. And just like we talked about before, if you go to color, you can tell it to plug in a file. And that file will be dudeuv.jpg, not .psd. And there's something we'll notice. I'll press 6 to go check out my model. Yeah, not too bad. That seam doesn't actually miss too bad. But you'll notice also that I have this the actual topology, all this wireframes all on him, and that's because I forgot to hide it. So I'm going to go and hide my UVs. Go ahead and file save as, save it as a JPEG, and then I'll overwrite that old one. Okay, back to Maya. Click on this. I can always hold right click and go to material attributes. I'll go to color. If I reload that color, now those wireframes gone, and you can see I can have something different on the front versus the back. I can create some really cool textures. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. I know that's a whole lot to throw at you, but feel free to shoot me questions if I forgot to cover anything or if something's too confusing. But go back and watch the videos a couple times. I know you guys have a whole lot on your plate, but this is where it gets really fun. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time.